Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Ice Sheet Survival series. And we start things off right where we left off last time. It is currently a bit lonely out on the ice sheet. Cambiar has left the colony for a few days in his pursuit of a good trade deal, and so Cobra is all on his own. In the last episode we already started upgrading our defensive structures, and that is also what Cobra is still working on at the moment. And those defensive structures will be put to the test right here at the beginning of the episode. As Cobra is playing some harmless poker, we are being attacked by not one but two groups of traps people. And not only that, it looks like they have Sappers in their ranks, so this has the potential to turn very ugly indeed. Now there is one group coming in from the west and one coming in from the north, and because of that they will likely hit with a bit of a delay. That is good, but still only a small relief, because the Sappers here will try to avoid all of our defenses and instead dig their way into our base. And unfortunately, over on the left side here by the corpse storage rooms, they should have a very easy time doing that. The wall to the outside is only 3 tiles thick here, so I think it's safe to say that especially for that first group coming in from the left, that will be the point of attack. Now the problem is we have absolutely no defenses in place here, and we also have no time to construct any, so we will have to approach this a bit more creatively. Because I expect our enemies to completely avoid the trapped corridor into our base, we should also be able to move some of the traps guarding that entrance. Now I have to stress at this point, this is not an entirely risk-free endeavor. There is a tiny chance of triggering a trap when it's relocated, but I think we have no other choice but to take this risk. Considering the number of enemies we have against us, this seems like the safest bet. And just barely in time we managed to get all the traps placed. This should be enough to take out at least 2 enemies of this first group, but there are 5 attackers in that group, so to get them to flee we will need to kill at least 1 more. For the moment though, it seems like the attackers are backing off, at least slightly, and it even looks like we might have some natural backup here, as a flash storm is hitting the ice sheet, and it does so right near our entrance area. Now of course it still remains to be seen whether or not the enemies will actually make their way through there, but if they do, a lucky thunderstrike could make quick work of them. And things get even better here, as one of the attackers seems to have gotten tangled up with a lone Lynx. And for that one attacker, the animal could cause serious injuries, maybe taking additional work off of our hands. The remaining group of 3 meanwhile is actually making their way into our defenses, and that turns out as well as one could have expected it to, with the Lynx winning the one-on-one fight outside of the base, and with a trap snapping shot and killing a 3rd enemy, group 1 of 2 is already routing. That however still leaves the second one, but at least for the moment it seems like they have chosen the Lynx as their target. In the meantime, we have also slightly moved over one of the traps to make it even harder to get into our base. Unfortunately, I also forgot to close off the entrance to our power generators, so we can only hope our enemies will not come this far. At this point, they do then also make an organized effort to get into our base. Still, there are only 4 of them, so killing 2 will be enough. And with a trap well in place right behind the door this guy is bashing down, that should make things a little easier in just a second. Right, first enemy down, let's see what the other 3 are doing, and that's it already. A few well-placed shots and then the trap does the rest, and with that the remaining attackers are fleeing. Now admittedly, this was probably close to the best way this could have gone. I was a bit scared when I read the word Sappers and saw 2 groups of enemies, but ultimately we were able to adapt and overcame the challenge. And well, we also still have 2 enemies here who are seemingly too stubborn to get out the easy way, and if possible I would prefer not to lose the plasteel door there, so let's see if we can't put an end to their escape attempt. Right, unfortunately the door is down and the 2 attackers seem surprisingly resilient, but maybe we can get one more lucky shot in and kill at least one of them. Okay, that didn't work out either, and I don't think we desperately have to pursue here. Despite their injuries, both enemies here still seem pretty fast, and after all we have made our fair share of corpses already. So, time to do some cleanup, and this time we'll also strip the enemy who's in the process of dying here. That will allow us to sell the clothing and make us a tiny bit of money. After a quick meal though, Cobra heads off to bed for the moment, so while he's sleeping, let's jump over to Cambiar. Out on the ice sheet we can see everyone's favorite cannibal is close to reaching his destination, and in fact here he is, time to do some trading. Starting off, we will of course fulfill the trade offer and hand over 21 tribal wear outfits in exchange for 3 healer mech serums. But before we leave again, let's also have a quick look at what this colony has to sell. Right, I had a short look around, but in the end there was nothing that really excited me. Most of the stuff here are things that we either already have or don't need, so we will take only our 3 healer mech serums, and with that Cambiar will now begin the return trip across the ice sheet back home to our base. And in that base, Cobra is awake again and beginning the repairs. Of course, our first priority is the currently wide open hole into the corpse storage room, so we'll get that fixed, and while we're at it, we'll also add an additional layer of wall. Even if that doesn't stop future Sappers from attacking this point, it might still slow down their progress. And just as Cobra is finished, we also have a transport pod crashing down, so as usual, let us have a look at the person inside. Right, we have Phil here, 44-year-old herbalist, very skilled with plants, medicine and arts, and no incapabilities either. The injuries on him are pretty severe and he will die in only 4 hours, but on the bright side he has no permanent scars or other injuries. He also has the teetotaler and the undergrounder traits, and especially that last one could be pretty useful should he spend extended time inside of our mountain base. So yeah, we will start another rescue mission now. Phil here does have a faction affiliation though, so he may or may not join us should we manage to save him, but to me he definitely looks promising enough to give it a try. An improvised medical sleeping spot here allows us to tend to his wounds immediately, and even though I would like to use some medicine for this, we simply don't have the time to fetch some. Still, Cobra is able to quickly stop the bleeding, and with that Phil is stabilized for the moment. Now though he needs a warm spot to recover and to not die of hypothermia, and we have done this before, let's haul him into our hydroponics farm. Even though it's not the most beautiful place, it is nice and warm inside, hopefully enough for Phil to make a full recovery. By the way, should he actually join us in the end, we will of course change the name. After all, the Patreon naming rights tier exists for a reason, so I will try not to call him by his current name too many times, just so we all don't get too used to it. Cobra meanwhile has made a bit more pemmican because the huskies have run out, although they didn't really have much to do with that. It was mostly Cambiar who simply took all of their food on his caravan trip. Speaking of Cambiar, we now get a notification of a major break risk for him, and we can also quickly see why. His sickness and his lack of recreation causes a big mood penalty, and all alone out on the ice sheet there is not much that can boost his mood, so we can only hope he makes it back safely and avoids a mental break for the next 1.5 days. Back home in the base meanwhile, we have a good thing accompanied by a bad one. Yes, somewhere out on the ice sheet we might have a potentially lucrative cargo drop, but much more important, our rescued colonist has gotten sick with an infection. And if we don't tend to that immediately, he could eventually die. The cargo drop meanwhile, that's 16 units of Wake Up, a hard drug that keeps colonists awake for extended periods of time, but also one that is highly addictive and will therefore only be used for trading. With a bit of herbal medicine, Cobra can now tend to the infection, hopefully advancing the progress towards immunity before the infection becomes fatal. That is all we can do to help though, so Cobra now heads back off to bed, but once again his sleep is interrupted almost immediately as we have a trade ship pass by. Right, so this is a bulk goods trader allowing us to sell at least some of our things. At the moment, however, the selection is limited to only clothing items, but still the quality of those is good enough to make us just around 250 silver. After a good night's sleep, Cambiar then starts the next day feeding the injured, and then, just as he's about to start cooking again, we witness another crashed transport pod. Inside we have Earth, 31 years young, and to put it bluntly, not what I'm looking for in a colonist. Yes, her stats are looking solid and she could be a good animal handler, but her incapability of dumb labor is already a big no-go, and in volatile, wimp and abrasive she has 3 purely negative traits, so she definitely has the potential to be more trouble than she's worth. And that is also the reason why we will leave her here, despite the fact that she only has one single injury. Back in the base, meanwhile, the infection gets another round of treatment, but we can already see here the progress towards immunity is coming along nicely, at the moment clearly outpacing the progress of the infection itself. The Huskies, meanwhile, get another load of pemmican, and at the moment, with 5 Huskies in the stables, it looks like Cobra will have his hands full with them. And unfortunately, things are also not getting any easier, as we now have a psychic ship on the map. And especially with only one colonist, this is really bad. Not only do we need to destroy this ship as soon as possible, but we also need to get rid of whatever's hiding inside, and in all likelihood we will be outnumbered in that fight. Before we get moving though, let us quickly secure all of the plant matter inside of the kitchen. I don't want the Huskies to eat it, that will simply end up wasting resources, and even if they once again run out of pemmican, the Huskies will be fine without food for a few hours. Up next, we will then switch on the turrets, in all likelihood we will need them, and before we start our attack we will also take care of Cobra's needs here for a while. What I have planned could take some time, and it would be a shame if Cobra suffers of a mental break midway through because of hunger or a lack of recreation. And we even have another trade ship coming in that we will have a look at before we engage, although in the end I decided not to sell or buy anything. A couple of Arctic wolves sounded intriguing in the beginning, but that would then once again require a lot of training, so I think we'll stick with the Huskies, and while the crafting neurotrainer mech serum also caught my eye, we are currently not doing that much crafting, and our 2 colonists are skilled enough for what we need. So let's close the trade window and man the mortar gun, because that is how we will take care of things. Like I said, the Mechanoids inside of the ship will undoubtedly outnumber us, and they will also stay in the vicinity of the ship unless we damage the ship directly. Luring them over to the base is technically possible, but very tricky and very dangerous. After all, some of the Mechanoids are pretty fast, and if we're not careful, they could hunt Cobra down with ease. The mortar, on the other hand, is the much more secure option in my opinion. Yes, it is very inaccurate and it will likely take some time until the ship is destroyed, but it has 2 major advantages. 1, we don't have to move Cobra a single inch to do damage to the ship, and 2, if we keep damaging the ship, the Mechanoids will automatically come to us all on their own. And with no centipedes among them, our defenses should be more than capable of taking them down. And here you can see it, after only 2 hits the ship is already almost halfway destroyed, and the Mechanoids have started to move. However, after only a few meters they return. I am not quite sure how the AI works in this case. I think they do prioritize the source of danger, in this case the mortar gun, but maybe due to the long firing breaks of the mortar gun that behavior gets overridden midway through. In the end, I don't really care, this only makes it easier for us, and after lucky hit number 3 right here, they are also already moving again. And at this point it looks like they are in fact heading straight for the traps, and with that of course straight towards their end. And indeed, in the matter of just a few seconds, 3 of the 4 Mechanoids have already gone down. The 4th one is lagging behind a bit, but I'm sure it will suffer the same fate. And indeed, here we are, no need for our turrets to get involved. And as you can see, with all enemies down, I have also stopped firing. I don't think we need to waste any more explosive shells on the ship. After all, we have no more Mechanoids to worry about, so after Cobra has gotten some rest, we can simply walk over there and destroy what's left. A quick look also at our infected patient now, and indeed our treatment was successful, we have achieved immunity, so now it's hopefully only a matter of time before this guy is fully healed. With Cobra awake again, we are then also once again being informed of a major break risk on Cambiar, but again there is not much we can do about it at the moment. We simply have to hope he makes it back to the base before suffering a mental break. Before we then deal with the poison ship remains, we will also take care of some feeding work, and just in that moment Cambiar finally breaks. I think this also already happened last time he was out on the caravan trip, so now he's wandering around the ice sheet in a daze just a few hours away from the colony. A bit unfortunate, yes, but in the grand scheme of things it hopefully won't hurt us too much. Cobra meanwhile has made it over to the poison ship, and this will now be quick work. A few volleys from the assault rifle should be enough to destroy the thing for good. And here we are, no more annoying psychic drone in Cobra's head. This will raise his mood significantly and we can return to the colony, one advanced component in hand. After a bit of cooking, it is then once again time to bring the huskies some new pemmican and also to refuel the generator, and while Cobra is doing that, we are being visited by a pirate merchant. And those are always interesting because they could potentially sell us a new colonist, provided of course what they have to offer is better than what we're currently healing up. Unfortunately though, that was not the case. Sarah here was out immediately with a variety of incapabilities, as well as with the potentially very dangerous pyromaniac trait. Logan here then disqualified himself with a psychite addiction, a few old injuries, and by already being 75 years old. And finally then we have the fittingly named Doc, who actually has pretty good skills, but who's also a neurotic nudist, not really that well suited for the ice sheet, and in the end this scar on the left arm was the deciding factor for me. But thanks to the wake-up cargo drop we can at least sell something now, and we even make 300 silver from it. Shortly after midnight then, Cobra gets some rest and we skip ahead to the next morning, and that once again begins with a small incident, as a broken conduit catches fire, and not only that, 2 of our huskies are also burned in the process. And especially with the 2 huskies running around in the storage room, this could be disastrous if we not take care of it quickly, but luckily Cobra is able to take care of the problem and extinguishes all flames before they spread. Still, both Biscuit and Madeline suffered quite a few injuries in the process. Biscuit definitely got it worse of the 2 with a total of 7 burn injuries, but both of them now head back to the stables to rest and heal up. And Cobra of course offers any assistance he can. We are not using any medicine here because I don't think the injuries are that bad, but still we will have them all patched up to speed up the healing process. This takes quite a while, but it also gives Cambiar enough time to finally recover from his mental break, and so with a hefty mood boost from the catharsis, he is now finally on the move again. And just a few moments after the huskies have been tended to, he arrives back home on the ice sheet, so our colony is once again complete. After unloading his inventory, most importantly of course the 3 healer mech serums, Cambiar then finally gets bed rest again after quite a few days in the bedroll, while Cobra is already awake again and busy cooking. On the next morning then, Cambiar immediately makes himself useful. We have lost a few traps in the Mechanoid attack, and getting them back up quickly is definitely the sensible thing to do. Thanks to our treatment, Madeline is also already fully healed again, while Biscuit is still recovering. A few hours later then, after a few more meals and pemmican have been made, Cobra heads off to bed again while Cambiar takes care of the steel reserves. Obviously, without steel we cannot replace our traps, so let's fire up the smelter and make some more. We also once again have another transport pod crash down, but the person inside does not really excite with his skill set, and while his traits are not really detrimental in our current situation, they are also nothing that would really help us out. So once again, we'll leave him be. After all, we might just have someone else join us shortly. And speak of the devil, here he is, Phil is fully healed again. However, it also looks like he has no intentions to stay around, and well, it is what it is, we can't really force him to. And despite his injuries all being healed up, he also suffered a scar on his torso, a tiny aspect that makes it slightly easier to lose him, but still it would have been nice if our healing work had paid off. In the end, thanks to mild summer temperatures, Phil then eventually makes it off the map. Our relations with his faction improve by 12 points. They are still deep in the negatives, but not as much as before. Back in the base, Cobra is now harvesting some rice again, something we haven't done for the entire episode, I believe, but we could use some more as we're slowly running out of alternatives. After quite a few misfortunes, Randy then also gifts us with a slightly more positive event. Yes, a steel meteorite is nothing spectacular, but considering our shortages, it could come in handy. Cambiar, meanwhile, has successfully replaced all of the traps leading into our base, and so things are once again safe and secure. And so, with Cobra replanting rice and Cambiar hauling in the last remaining Mechanoid corpse, I think we can slowly wrap up today's episode. I have to say it was pretty action-packed, at times a bit more than I was comfortable with, but in the end we didn't suffer any devastating damages, injuries or losses. Yes, it is a bit sad that we were once again unable to recruit a 3rd colonist. Maybe there is also actually no chance of someone joining us if they have a faction affiliation. That might actually be something worth researching, so if you have an answer to that, then feel free to leave it in the comments. For now, we will make the cut right here. As always, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, then I would be happy if you could leave a thumbs up. And of course, if you want to support the channel further, then you can either subscribe if you haven't already, or you can also support the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.